The most dangerous man in the city could make people disappear with a phone call, broker million-dollar deals with a handshake, and command respect with a glance, but he couldn't make his 5-year-old son eat dinner. That is, until the woman scrubbing his floors did what a dozen celebrity chefs couldn't. Welcome back. It's great to have my beautiful family and friends here. If you're ready to dive into this story, hit subscribe right now. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you, because I'll be back tomorrow with another story you won't want to miss. Now let's begin. Serena's hands had stopped shaking around mops and disinfectant years ago, but they trembled now as she stood in the doorway of the Ivory Rose's kitchen, watching a small battlefield of culinary casualties pile up on the counter. Rejected plates, untouched masterpieces, the kind of food that belonged in magazines, not garbage bins. "This is ridiculous," Laurent muttered, his face the color of an overripe tomato. "The child is impossible, impossible." Through the service window, Serena could see them clearly now. Dylan Scott, whose name made grown men nervous, sitting with the patience of a saint next to a little boy who looked like he'd rather negotiate a peace treaty than eat his vegetables. Liam. She'd heard the staff whisper about him, about how he'd made 3 chefs quit in as many months. The Mafia boss's hand rested on his son's shoulder with a gentleness that seemed at odds with everything she'd heard about Dylan Scott. The man who allegedly had judges in his pocket looked genuinely helpless, and something about that image, power rendered powerless by parental love, made Serena do something incredibly stupid. She stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said quietly, her voice barely rising above the kitchen clatter. Laurent didn't hear her, neither did the sous chef scrambling to plate yet another rejected attempt. "Excuse me," she tried again, louder this time. The kitchen fell silent, every head turned. Laurent looked at her like she'd just announced she was going to perform open-heart surgery with a spatula. "Yes," his tone suggested she should make this quick. Serena's mother used to say that courage was just fear that had said its prayers. Right now, Serena wasn't sure she'd prayed enough. "I think I might be able to make something the boy would eat." The silence that followed was the kind that precedes either laughter or lightning strikes. Laurent's eyebrow climbed his forehead like it was trying to escape his face entirely. "You, the cleaner, wants to cook in my kitchen." "I don't want to overstep," Serena said, her voice steadier than she felt, "but I grew up making food for picky eaters. My little brothers wouldn't eat anything that wasn't." She paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound insulting to French chefs' culinary masterpieces, made with love instead of technique. "Love?" Laurent's laugh was sharp enough to cut bread. "This is the Ivory Rose, not a soup kitchen. We don't cook with feelings, we cook with skill." "Then why isn't he eating?" The words were out before Serena could stop them. The kitchen went so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the water glasses 2 rooms away. Laurent's face cycled through several shades of red before settling on a purple that suggested he was reconsidering several life choices, possibly including his decision not to become an accountant like his mother wanted. How dare. "Let her try." Everyone turned. Dylan Scott stood in the kitchen doorway, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. He wore his expensive suit like armor, his presence filling the room the way smoke fills a bottle. Up close, Serena could see the exhaustion around his eyes, the kind that came from fighting battles that had no clear enemies. "Mr. Scott," Laurent stammered, "this woman is a cleaner, not a chef. She has no training, no." "She's right though, isn't she?" Dylan's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of someone used to being heard. "Liam isn't eating. Your skill hasn't worked. Maybe it's time to try something different." His eyes found Serena's, and she felt pinned like a butterfly in a collection. "What's your name?" "Serena Mason, sir." "Serena," he said it like he was testing the word, seeing if it fit. "What would you make for my son?" This was it, the moment where she either proved herself or made herself unemployed. Serena thought of her grandmother's kitchen, of meals that cost pennies but tasted like love had learned to cook. Spaghetti and meatballs, the real kind, not deconstructed or fancy, just comfort food. Laurent made a sound like a wounded opera singer. "Spaghetti, spaghetti, we have a $50 pasta special on the menu with." "Which my son rejected," Dylan interrupted smoothly. He turned back to Serena. "How long would it take?" 20 minutes, maybe less." Dylan nodded once, decisive. "Laurent, give her access to whatever she needs." It wasn't a request. The kitchen exploded into whispered chaos as Serena moved to the prep station, her heart hammering against her ribs like it was trying to escape. She'd cleaned this kitchen 100 times, knew where everything lived, but accessing it as a chef instead of invisible staff felt like stepping into a parallel universe where the rules had changed, but nobody had given her the handbook. She found ground beef, onions, garlic, canned tomatoes, not the fancy San Marzano ones Laurent hoarded like dragon treasure, but the regular kind that reminded her of home. Good pasta, the kind that didn't cost more than her weekly paycheck. Simple ingredients that didn't need a PhD to appreciate. As she cooked, muscle memory took over, browning the meat just right, sautéing the onions until they surrendered their sweetness, adding garlic at exactly the right moment when the kitchen would fill with that smell that made people think of home whether they wanted to or not. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her head. Fancy food feeds the body, baby, but soul food feeds the spirit. The sauce simmered, filling the kitchen with an aroma that made even Lawrence's expression soften slightly, though he quickly disguised it with a sniff of professional disdain. Serena plated it simply, no architectural statements, no foam, no microgreens that cost more than their weight in gold. Just spaghetti twirled into a neat nest, 3 meatballs arranged like they were comfortable with each other, a sprinkle of parmesan, and a small basil leaf because even simple food deserved to feel pretty. Dylan appeared in the kitchen doorway again, and Serena realized she'd drawn an audience. Waiters peeked around corners. Sue's chefs pretended to be busy while watching from the corners of their eyes. Even the dishwasher had stopped mid-rinse. "It's ready," Serena said, her voice barely above a whisper. Dylan looked at the plate. His expression was unreadable, carved from the same expensive marble as the ivory rose's floors. Then he did something unexpected. "Bring it out yourself," he said. He should meet the person who made it. Walking through the Ivory Rose's dining room with a plate of spaghetti felt like carrying a bomb through a jewelry store. Everyone noticed, and nobody thought it would end well. Serena's sensible work shoes clicked against marble floors that she'd mopped just yesterday. The chandeliers above cast light that cost more per hour than she made in a week, and the few remaining diners, the kind who wore watches worth more than cars, watched her progress with the mild interest of people whose entertainment options had suddenly expanded beyond their wine selections. Liam sat exactly where she'd last seen him, but up close, he looked less like a miniature tyrant and more like a tired little boy who'd been performing exhaustion for an audience of one. His blue eyes tracked her approach with the wariness of someone who'd learned that adults bearing food usually meant disappointment. "Liam," Dylan said, his voice gentler than Serena had heard it in the kitchen. "This is Miss Serena. She made something special for you." Serena set the plate down, her hands steadier than they had any right to be. "Hi, Liam. I heard you weren't very hungry tonight." The boy regarded her with the solemn assessment of a judge considering evidence. The other food was weird. "Yeah," Serena pulled out a chair, probably a firing offense, sitting at a guest's table, but Dylan nodded slightly, so she did. "What made it weird?" "It looked like art," Liam said. "Art, the way other people might say homework or vegetables. My teacher says we're not supposed to eat art." Serena bit back a smile. "Your teacher sounds smart. This isn't art, it's just spaghetti and meatballs. The kind my grandma used to make when I was your age." "Did you eat it?" "Every time. Even when I wasn't hungry, because sometimes food isn't just about being hungry, it's about feeling safe." Something flickered in Liam's expression, something that made Serena's heart clench. Dylan's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on his son's shoulder. Liam looked at the plate, looked at Serena, looked at his father, whose face had arranged itself into an expression of careful neutrality that probably took more effort than most people realized. Then Liam picked up his fork. The dining room seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere in the kitchen, Serena imagined Laurent either praying or preparing to gloat, possibly both simultaneously. Liam twirled the spaghetti, not expertly, his 5-year-old coordination producing more of a spaghetti ball than the elegant nest Serena had plated, and brought it to his mouth. "I chewed." His eyes widened. And then Liam Dylan Scott, the boy who'd made celebrity chefs weep and food whisperers reconsider their career choices, smiled. "It tastes like happy," he announced, and took another bite. Dylan's breath left him in a rush that might have been relief or prayer or both. His eyes, when they met Serena's, held something she couldn't quite name. Gratitude, yes, but something deeper, something that made her suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, how the candlelight caught the sharp angles of his face and softened them into something almost vulnerable. "Miss Serena," Dylan said, his voice carrying an emotion that money couldn't buy and power couldn't command, "you have no idea what you just did." But she did. She'd seen it in the way his shoulders had dropped half an inch, in the way his thumb brushed his son's shoulder in a gesture so tender it made her throat tight. She'd watched one of the most dangerous men in the city be just a father, desperate and grateful and human. Liam was already halfway through the plate, eating with the single-minded focus of someone who'd finally found what they'd been looking for. Between bites, he chattered about his day, about his kindergarten teacher, about a dog he'd seen that morning, normal 5-year-old conversation that Dylan absorbed like a man who'd been starving for exactly this kind of mundane miracle. "You have brothers?" Liam asked suddenly, sauce decorating his chin like a tiny, delicious beard. "Two," Serena confirmed, grabbing a napkin and dabbing at his face with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done this before. "They're teenagers now, but when they were your age, they were just as picky as you." "What did you make them?" "Whatever made them smile. Sometimes it was pancakes, sometimes it was grilled cheese, sometimes it was spaghetti just like this." Liam considered this with the gravity of a philosopher contemplating the universe. "Can you make pancakes?" "Liam," Dylan interjected gently, "Miss Serena has her own job. She was kind enough to help us tonight, but—" Actually, Serena heard herself say, the words escaping before her. "Brain could stop them. I mean if you needed, if it would help." Dylan's gaze locked onto hers, and the world narrowed to just the space between them, charged with something Serena didn't want to name because naming it would make it real, and real things had consequences. I couldn't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm offering. Serena straightened in her chair, meeting his eyes with more confidence than she felt. Look, Mr. Scott, I know my place here. I'm staff, I clean floors, but if I can help your son eat, if I can make those worried lines around your eyes disappear for even one meal, isn't that worth figuring out the logistics? The silence stretched between them like taffy, sweet and precarious. From the kitchen, Serena could hear the muffled sounds of cleanup, of a restaurant winding down. Liam had finished his spaghetti and was now attempting to drink his water while watching them with the open curiosity of a child who sensed something important was happening, but couldn't quite name it. What's your rate? Dylan asked finally, and Serena blinked. My rate? To cook for Liam regularly, I'll pay whatever. I don't want money. The words came out sharper than intended. I mean, I need money, obviously I'm not, but this isn't about that. This is about a little boy who needs to eat and a father who's trying his best. Dylan's expression shifted into something unreadable. Everyone wants something, Miss Mason. Serena, and yes, everyone wants something. I want to feel like I'm doing something that matters beyond making floors shine. I want to use skills my grandmother gave me before she died. She paused, surprising herself with the truth. I want to matter, even if it's just to one 5-year-old with a grudge against fancy food. Liam giggled at that, the sound bright as bells in the expensive quiet. Then let me at least compensate you for your time, Dylan pressed. Additional pay, adjusted hours. Kitchen. Both Dylan and Liam looked at her. I want access to kitchen, Serena clarified, her heart hammering at her own audacity. Not this one, not with Laurent having an aneurysm every time I touch his precious Le Creuset. Somewhere I can cook for Liam without feeling like I'm committing a crime against French cuisine, and I keep my regular job. I'm not quitting to become a private chef, I'm just helping on my terms. Dylan studied her for a long moment, and Serena had the distinct impression of being catalogued, assessed, filed away in whatever mental database he kept on people. You're either very brave or very foolish, Serena Mason. Can I be both? A smile ghosted across his face there and gone like smoke. I have a townhouse 3 blocks from here. The kitchen is underutilized. You'd have full access, and I'd make sure your schedule at the Ivory Rose is adjusted to accommodate. Does that work? It was too much, too fast, too close to something that felt dangerously like the beginning of a story that didn't usually end well for women who looked like her and men who looked like him. But Liam was looking at her with hope in his eyes, and Dylan was looking at her like she'd just solved a puzzle that had been breaking him piece by piece. That works, Serena agreed, and sealed her fate with 2 words. Dylan extended his hand across the table, formal, businesslike, but when Serena shook it, his grip was warm, and it lingered half a second longer than strictly professional. Thank you, he said quietly. You have no idea what this means. But standing there in the Ivory Rose, with a 5-year-old's laughter still echoing and a dangerous man's gratitude warming her skin, Serena suspected she was beginning to understand. She just wasn't sure if understanding made her smart or suicidal. Probably both. What would you do if you discovered your simple act of kindness unexpectedly opened a door into a world you'd only ever observed from the outside? Would you step through or step back? The townhouse was the kind of place that appeared in magazines under headlines like Urban Elegance, or Where Luxury Meets Livability, which really meant where people with more money than sense proved they had excellent taste in interior designers. Serena stood on the marble steps 3 evenings later, her canvas bag of groceries feeling suddenly inadequate, like showing up to a black tie event in jeans. The brass door knocker gleamed with the kind of shine that suggested someone was paid handsomely to make it gleam exactly that much. She knocked. The door opened almost immediately, revealing not Dylan but a woman in her 60s with still gray hair pulled into a bun tight enough to give Serena a sympathy headache. Her expression suggested she'd been carved from the same disapproving granite as Mount Rushmore. You must be the cook. The woman's tone made cook sound like plague carrier. Serena Mason, yes. Mrs. Chen, I manage the household. She stepped aside with the enthusiasm of someone allowing a necessary pest inspector entry. Mr. Scott is in his office. The kitchen is this way. Interior matched the exterior's promise, all clean lines and muted colors, the kind of tasteful wealth that whispered instead of shouted, but something felt off. The furniture looked barely used, no pictures on the walls, no toys scattered in corners. It felt less like a home and more like a very expensive hotel room where someone was staying temporarily, waiting for their real life to begin. Mrs. Chen led her through a dining room where a table that could seat 12 sat empty, into a kitchen that made Serena's breath catch. It was gorgeous, professional-grade appliances, marble countertops, a gas range that had probably cost more than her car. Everything gleamed with the tragic beauty of tools that had never fulfilled their purpose. The kitchen of someone who'd bought the dream but never lived it. Mr. Scott. Request that you prepare meals here and have them ready by 6, Mrs. Chen recited like she was reading a rental agreement. Liam eats in the breakfast nook. You'll clean as you go. Is this acceptable? More than acceptable. Mrs. Chen's expression suggested nothing Serena did would ever be truly acceptable, but she nodded curtly. I'll inform Mr. Scott of your arrival. She paused at the doorway. A word of advice, Miss Mason. This is a job. Don't confuse kindness for familiarity. The Scotts have had complications with staff who forgot their place. The warning hung in the air like smoke after Mrs. Chen departed, leaving Serena alone in a kitchen that cost more than she'd make in 5 years. She unpacked her groceries, chicken, rice, vegetables, the building blocks of the kind of meal that had fed her family on paycheck-to-paycheck budgets. Her hands moved through familiar motions, washing, chopping, seasoning. The kitchen came alive under her touch, sounds and smells filling. The expensive emptiness. It smells like Miss Serena's here. Liam burst through the doorway with the velocity of a small, enthusiastic missile, Dylan following at a more measured pace. The Mafia boss had shed his suit jacket, his white shirt rolled to the elbows, and he looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that sleep couldn't fix. Liam, we talked about running in the house, Dylan said, but his tone held more affection than admonishment. But Dad, it's Miss Serena. Liam was already climbing onto one of the bar stools at the kitchen island, his feet swinging. What are you making? Honey garlic chicken with rice and green beans. Serena smiled at his nose wrinkle. I know vegetables are suspicious, but these are the good kind, I promise, crispy, not mushy. I'll try them, Liam declared with the magnanimity of a king granting a pardon, but only because you made them. Dylan moved to the opposite side of the island, and Serena was suddenly aware of the domestic intimacy of the scene, her cooking, him watching, their child between them. Except Liam wasn't theirs, and this wasn't her kitchen, and she was staff, just like Mrs. Chen had so helpfully reminded her. How was your day? Dylan asked, and it took Serena a moment to realize he was talking to her, not Liam. I'm fine, cleaned 3 bathrooms, 2 dining rooms, and removed gum from under approximately 47 tables. 47 exactly. I stopped counting after that, it got depressing. She glanced at him, caught him almost smiling. How was your day? Manage any criminal empires? Threaten any city councilmen? The words were out before she could stop them, and the kitchen temperature dropped approximately 30 degrees. Dylan's expression went carefully blank. I'm a real estate developer, Miss Mason. Right, and I'm just a cleaner who happens to be cooking in a kitchen that costs more than I'll make in my lifetime. Serena kept her tone light, but her message was clear. We all have our cover stories, Mr. Scott. Liam looked between them with the fascinated horror of a child watching their parents argue, or in this case, watching 2 adults navigate a conversation loaded with more landmines than actual words. Dylan was quiet for a long moment, then, Serena, when you're here, when you're with Liam, what I do, what people think I do, it stays outside that door. And here I'm just a father trying to take care of his son. Can we agree on that? It was the vulnerability in his voice that got her, the way his hand had unconsciously moved to Liam's shoulder, protective, tender. This was the real Dylan Scott, the one who existed in the spaces between his reputation. We can agree on that, Serena said softly. The tension broke like a fever. Liam started chattering about his day at kindergarten, something about a guinea pig named Mr. Whiskers who'd escaped and caused chaos, and Dylan listened with the focused attention of someone for whom this was the most important conversation of his day. Serena plated the food and they moved to the breakfast nook, a cozy alcove that felt more lived in than the rest of the house. Liam dug in with enthusiasm, even eating his green beans without the suspicious investigation she'd expected. Miss Serena, Liam said between bites, why don't you have kids? Liam, Dylan warned. What, I'm just asking. Serena laughed, though the question poked at something tender. I'm only 25, I've got time, right now I'm focusing on my career. Cleaning, Liam's confusion was genuine, not cruel. And cooking apparently, plus I'm taking online classes, business management, maybe someday I'll have my own restaurant. Dylan's head came up at that. You want to own a restaurant? Doesn't everyone who can cook? It's probably a terrible idea. Most restaurants fail in the first year. But my grandmother always said if you're going to dream, dream big enough to scare yourself. Smart woman, your grandmother. The smartest, she raised 3 kids on a nurse's salary and still found time to teach me that food is love made visible. Serena gestured at Liam's nearly empty plate. She'd have liked you. You appreciate good food when you taste it. I appreciate when people don't make my food look weird, Liam corrected. That too. They fell into an easy rhythm over the next hour. Liam finished eating, then pulled out coloring books at the breakfast table while Dylan nursed a coffee and Serena cleaned up. The domestic simplicity felt surreal, a mafia boss, a cleaner, and a kindergartner, playing house in a townhouse that probably had more security than Fort Knox. Serena, Dylan said quietly while Liam was absorbed in turning a dinosaur an alarming shade of purple, why did you really offer to do this? She considered lying, offering some sanitized version of the truth, but something about the low light and the quiet moment and the way he was looking at her, really looking. Like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve, made honesty feel necessary. My dad left when I was 7, she said, hands still in the dishwater, not looking at him. Just gone one day, and my mom tried, she really did, but she was drowning, working 2 jobs, coming home exhausted, barely able to stay awake long enough to make sure we were fed. She paused, remembering. My grandmother moved in, and every night, no matter how tired she was, she made dinner, real dinner. She said that was the one time we were all together, the one time we felt like a family, instead of people who happened to share an address. Serena finally looked at Dylan, found him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. When I saw you with Liam that night at the Ivory Rose, I saw my grandmother. I saw someone fighting to hold their family together with the only weapons they had. For her, it was food. For you, it's everything else. I just thought maybe I could help, because someone helped me. The silence that followed felt sacred somehow, like they'd crossed some invisible line into territory that required a different map. His mother left 6 months ago, Dylan said finally, his voice so low Serena had to strain to hear it. Just packed a bag one afternoon and didn't come back. She'd signed a prenup that made leaving expensive, so she left Liam behind too. His jaw tightened. She chose money over our son, and I can't make him understand why his mother didn't want him without destroying something in him that should never be destroyed in a 5-year-old. Serena's heart cracked open, so he stopped eating. Every rejected meal was him rejecting the life that didn't include her. The therapist says it's his way of controlling something when everything else is chaos. Dylan's hand curled into a fist on the table. I can control a lot of things, Serena, but I can't control this. I can't make him feel safe again. Maybe that's not your job, Serena said gently. Maybe your job is just to keep showing up, keep trying, keep being the parent who stays. Dylan's eyes, when they met hers, held something raw and grateful and dangerous. How did you get so wise at 25? Hard living and a really good grandmother. He laughed, a real laugh, and the sound transformed his face from intimidating to almost boyish. For a moment, Serena saw who he might have been before life and choices and consequences carved him into the man who made senators nervous. Dad, Liam's voice interrupted the moment. Come see my dinosaur, it's eating a building. Dylan rose but paused next to Serena on his way to his son. Thank you, he said quietly, for everything, for dinner, for understanding, for being here. He was close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. Close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his eyes, the small scar on his jawline, the way his pulse jumped at his throat. You're welcome, she managed, and he moved away, leaving her standing at the sink with wet hands and a racing heart, and the growing suspicion that she'd just made things very complicated. But watching him crouch next to Liam, examining the purple dinosaur with solemn appreciation, listening to his son's laughter fill the kitchen's expensive emptiness. Maybe complicated was worth it. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Serena had learned several important things about Dylan Scott. 1, he took his coffee black with exactly 1 sugar, no more, no less, and would rather go without than drink it improperly sweetened. 2, he worked from his home office most afternoons, conducting business via phone calls that she pretended not to overhear, though phrases like convince him it's in his best interest, and the councilman will see reason or he'll see consequences, weren't exactly subtle. 3, he was lonely in a way that had nothing to do with being alone and everything to do with being unable to be himself around anyone except his 5-year-old son. And 4, she was falling for him, which was possibly the stupidest thing she'd ever done, and she'd once tried to give herself bangs with kitchen scissors. Miss Serena's here, Liam's greeting had become ritual, his small body launching at her the moment she walked through the door. Today he wore a Spider-Man shirt and mismatched socks, the kind of outfit that suggested Dylan had lost the morning battle over acceptable clothing choices. Hey kiddo, rough fashion day. Dad said I could wear whatever I wanted because it's Friday. Liam said this with the triumph of someone who'd won a major negotiation. Smart man, your father. I heard that, Dylan called from somewhere deeper in the townhouse. He appeared moments later, and Serena's traitorous heart did its usual gymnastics routine. Today he was casually dressed, dark jeans and a gray Henley that showed off the kind of physique that didn't come from a gym membership alone. I'm choosing my battles. Today's battle is convincing him that fruit counts as dessert. Bold strategy, how's that working? I'll let you know after dinner. It'd fallen into this easy banter over the weeks, a rhythm that felt dangerously like friendship or maybe something more hazardous. Mrs. Chen had started leaving earlier, her disapproving presence replaced by something that felt almost like family, if family included a man with alleged mob connections and a woman who cleaned toilets for a living. Tonight's menu was meatloaf, the kind Serena's grandmother made, with a sweet glaze that turned skeptics into believers. She moved through the kitchen with practiced efficiency while Liam did homework at the breakfast nook and Dylan worked on his laptop, the 3 of them existing in comfortable parallel. Miss Serena, Liam looked up from his worksheet. How do you spell dangerous? Dylan's typing stopped. DNGROUS, Serena spelled out. Why do you need that word? We're supposed to write about what our parents do. Tommy's dad is a firefighter, so he fights dangerous fires. My dad does. Liam paused, his small face scrunching in concentration. What do you do, Dad? The silence stretched like taffy. Serena kept her eyes on the meatloaf, giving Dylan space to craft whatever answer he'd prepared for this inevitable question. I help people solve problems, Dylan said carefully. Sometimes those problems are dangerous, but I make sure they don't hurt the people I'm helping. It wasn't a lie, technically, just a very diplomatic version of the truth. So you're like a superhero, Liam's eyes lit up. More like a negotiator. I talk to people and help them find solutions. That's boring. Dylan's laugh was startled and genuine. You're not wrong, buddy. Miss Serena's job is more interesting. She makes people happy with food and makes places clean. That's like 2 superpowers. Your son has excellent priorities, Serena said, sliding the meatloaf into the oven. Clearly he gets his intelligence from his father. Clearly. Their eyes met across the kitchen, and something electric passed between them. Awareness, attraction, the dangerous recognition of 2 people who were pretending this was just a professional arrangement, while knowing it had become something else entirely. Liam, oblivious to the adult tension, went back to his homework. Dylan returned to his laptop, but Serena caught him glancing at her when he thought she wasn't looking. She did the same, stealing glimpses while chopping vegetables, watching the way lamplight caught in his dark hair, the way his fingers moved across the keyboard with decisive confidence. This was dangerous, not mob dangerous, but heart dangerous, the kind that left scars no one else could see. Dinner was ready at 6 sharp. They gathered at the breakfast nook, their usual spot, more intimate than the formal dining room, and Liam dug into his. Meatloaf with enthusiasm. It tastes like a hug, he announced. That's the best compliment I've ever received. Better than when Laurent called your béarnaise adequately emulsified, Dylan asked, eyes dancing with amusement. Laurent once told me my floor cleaning created an acceptable shine. High praise from him is basically a marriage proposal. Dylan's smile faded slightly at the word marriage, and Serena mentally kicked herself. Wrong word, wrong topic. She scrambled for a subject change. So Liam, tell me about Mr. Whiskers. Did they catch him yet? Liam launched into an elaborate tale about the guinea pig's escape that involved the principal, a very startled janitor, and what he swore was a guinea pig hideout behind the gym. Dylan relaxed, the moment passing. They were halfway through dinner when Dylan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his entire demeanor changed, shoulders straightening, jaw tightening, that dangerous edge sliding back into place like a mask. Clicking shut. I need to take this, he said, already standing. Liam, stay with Serena. He disappeared into his office, and the warmth of the moment dissipated like steam. Serena couldn't hear the conversation, but she could see Dylan through the office's glass door, pacing like a caged predator, his free hand cutting through the air in sharp gestures that suggested the conversation wasn't going well. That gets like that sometimes, Liam said quietly, his fork pushing meatloaf around his plate, when bad people call. Serena's stomach dropped. Bad people. People who make him angry or scared, I can't always tell which. Liam looked at her with eyes too old for his age. You're not a bad person, right, Miss Serena? You won't make him scared. No, honey, I promise I'm not bad people. But watching Dylan through that glass door, seeing the tension in every line of his body, Serena wondered if she was lying. Because she was becoming dangerous to him in a different way, she was. Becoming someone he might trust, someone who could hurt him not with betrayal but with caring, with making him want things he'd probably decided he couldn't have. Dylan returned 15 minutes later, his composure restored but something sharp lingering in his eyes. Everything okay? Serena asked carefully. Business, nothing that concerns dinner. He ruffled Liam's hair, the gesture automatic. Sorry, buddy, where were we? Miss Serena was going to tell me about when she was in kindergarten. Was I? You were now, Liam said with 5-year-old logic. So Serena told stories while they finished eating, sanitized versions of her childhood that left out the hard parts, the nights when dinner was cereal because there was nothing else, the times her grandmother cried in the bathroom where she thought no one could hear. She told the good parts, the funny parts, and made them laugh. After dinner, Dylan insisted on helping clean up while Liam watched cartoons in the living room. They worked in synchronized silence for a few minutes before Dylan spoke. I'm sorry about the call. You don't need to apologize. This is supposed to be his safe time, our safe time, and I let the outside world intrude. Serena dried a plate, considering her words. Dylan, I'm not naive. I know what you are, what you do, or at least I have a pretty good idea. But when you're here with Liam with me, I see who you really are. The rest is just what you do to survive. He turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. And who am I, Serena, really? You're a father who would burn down the world for his son. You're a man trying to be good in a life that doesn't reward goodness. She stopped, realizing she was about to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I'm what? His voice had dropped to that low register that did dangerous things to her pulse. You're human, she finished, and I think you forget that. Sometimes. Dylan moved closer, near enough that she could feel the heat of him, smell his cologne mixed with something uniquely him. His hand came up, hovering near her face like he wanted to touch her, but was fighting the impulse. Serena, he said, her name a confession and a question all at once. The moment stretched between them, loaded with everything they weren't saying. The kitchen felt too small suddenly, the air too thick. Serena's heart hammered against her ribs, and she knew that if she didn't step back now, something would happen that would change everything. Dad, Miss Serena, come watch, the superhero is fighting the robot. Liam's voice shattered the moment like a stone through glass. Dylan stepped back, running a hand through his hair, that mask of control sliding back into place though his eyes remained turbulent. We should, he gestured vaguely toward the living room. Yeah, we should. They joined Liam, sitting on opposite ends of the couch with a 5-year-old between them like a buffer against their own poor impulse control. But when Liam laughed at something on screen and unconsciously grabbed both their hands, pulling them together, Serena felt Dylan's thumb brush across her knuckles, once, twice, a touch so brief she might have imagined it, except for the way her skin burned where he'd made contact. This was getting complicated, more than complicated. This was heading toward disaster with the inevitability of a train that had lost its brakes. But sitting there in the warm lamplight, with Liam's laughter filling the spaces between them and Dylan's presence solid and real beside her, Serena couldn't bring herself to care about the impending crash. Some disasters, she was learning, were worth running toward instead of away from. The call came on a Tuesday, which felt appropriate somehow. Disasters rarely waited for convenient days. Serena was at the Ivory Rose, elbow-deep in cleaning solution and other people's lunch. Debris when her phone buzzed. Dylan's name on the screen made her heart jump in that Pavlovian way she developed over the past month. Hello. Serena, his voice was tight, controlled in the way that meant something was very wrong. I need a favor, a big one. She straightened, alarm bells ringing. What's wrong? I have a meeting tonight, can't be postponed, can't be rescheduled. It's important. Mrs. Chen is visiting her sister in Philadelphia. I have no one else I trust to watch Liam. You want me to babysit? I know it's outside our arrangement. Dylan, yes, of course, yes. The relief in his exhale was palpable even through the phone. Thank you, I'll have a car pick you up at 5. This meeting might run late, very late. There's a guest room if you need to stay over. Something in his tone made her stomach clench. This wasn't a normal business meeting. This was the kind of meeting that made dangerous men worried. Dylan, are you? I have to go, thank you. Serena, really? He hung up before she could finish the question. Laurent noticed her distraction immediately. Miss Mason, that floor will not clean itself with you staring into space like a lovesick teenager. I'm not lovesick, she protested, but the denial sounded hollow even to her own ears. Laurent's skepticism could have stripped paint, and I am not French, we both know our truths, yes. The car that picked her up at 5 was the kind with tinted windows and a driver who looked like he moonlighted as a bodyguard, probably because he did. The ride to Dylan's townhouse felt surreal. Serena in her cleaning uniform, sitting in leather seats that cost more than her monthly rent, heading to babysit a mafia boss's son. Her life had gotten weird. Dylan met her at the door, already dressed for his meeting in a black suit that made him look like violence wrapped in expensive wool. But his eyes, when they found hers, held something almost desperate. Thank you for this, he said, ushering her inside. Liam's already eaten, but he'll probably claim starvation in an hour. Don't believe him. Bedtime is 8:30, but good luck enforcing that. He's learned negotiation tactics from watching me work. Dylan, she caught his arm, felt the tension vibrating through him like a live wire. Are you okay? No, the honesty startled them both, but I will be. I just need to get through tonight. What kind of meeting is this? He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw him weighing truth against protection. The kind where I make sure my son grows up with a father. The kind where being smart and careful is the difference between coming home and not. Fear, cold and sharp, slid between her ribs. Dylan. Miss Serena, Liam appeared, saving them both from whatever she'd been about to say. Dad says you're staying for bedtime. Can we build a fort? Sure, kiddo, we can build a fort. Dylan crouched to Liam's level, his hands on his son's small shoulders. You be good for Miss Serena, okay? Listen to what she says. Will you be home when I wake up? The question hung in the air, loaded with more weight than a 5-year-old should have to carry. Dylan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed steady. I'll be home, I promise. You always keep your promises. Always. Dylan pulled Liam into a hug that lasted several seconds too long, and Serena had to look away from the naked fear in his eyes when he finally stood. He paused next to her on his way to the door. If something happens, nothing's going to happen. But if it does, if I don't come back, there's a safe in my office. Code is Liam's birthday. Everything you need is in there. Numbers to call, instructions, money for. Dylan stopped. Serena grabbed his hand without thinking, held on tight. You're coming back. You promised your son, and you said you always keep your promises. He looked at their joined hands, then at her face, and something in his expression cracked open. I can't lose him, Serena. Whatever else happens, whatever I've done or will do, I can't leave him alone. You won't, because you're careful and you're smart and you're coming home tonight. She squeezed his hand. Go do whatever you have to do. We'll be here when you get back. Dylan lifted her hand to his lips, a gesture so unexpected, so intimate that her breath stopped. The kiss was featherlight against her knuckles, but it burned like a brand. You're remarkable, he said quietly. I hope you know that. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a finality that made her chest tight. Is Dad scared? Liam asked, too perceptive. No, honey, he's just being careful, because you're the most important thing in the world to him. You're important too. He smiles different when you're here. Out of the mouths of babes, come on, let's build that fort. They spent the next 2 hours constructing an elaborate blanket fort, using every pillow in the townhouse, 3 fitted sheets, and what Serena was pretty sure was a very expensive cashmere throw. Liam directed operations like a tiny general, and she followed orders, grateful for the distraction. At 8:30, she attempted bedtime. At 9, after 3 glasses of water, 2 bathroom trips, and 1 lengthy negotiation about whether monsters could be defeated with nightlights, Liam finally fell asleep. Serena sat in the chair beside his bed, watching his chest rise and fall, and tried not to think about Dylan out there somewhere, having the kind of meeting where men discuss things that made other men disappear. She should leave, go to the guest room, but something kept her rooted in that chair, as if staying near Liam could somehow protect Dylan by proxy. Magic thinking, her grandmother would have called it, but her grandmother had also believed that love could be transferred through food, so maybe magic thinking ran in the family. Love. The word landed in her chest like a stone in water, sending ripples through everything she thought she knew about herself. She loved Dylan Scott. Loved a man who made his living doing things she couldn't even fully imagine. Loved a mafia boss. Loved someone so far outside her world that their orbit shouldn't have ever crossed. And yet here she was, sitting in his son's bedroom at 10 p.m., waiting for him to come home from whatever fresh hell he'd walked into, and praying to every deity she could name that he'd keep his promise. The hours crawled. 11, midnight, 1 a.m. At 1:30, Serena's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He's okay. Meeting running long, don't worry. She stared at the message. How did they know she'd be worried? Who was watching? The phone buzzed again. This is Thomas, Dylan's head of security. He asked me to update you. He'll be home soon. Serena exhaled shakily, texted back, thank you. At 2:15 a.m., she heard the front door open. She was in the hallway before. Conscious thought caught up, moving toward the sound of footsteps with her heart in her throat. Dylan appeared at the top of the stairs, and relief hit her so hard she went lightheaded. He looked exhausted, his suit jacket gone, his shirt partially unbuttoned, a fresh bruise blooming along his jawline. But he was alive, he was home. Serena, he stopped when he saw her, surprise flickering across his face. You're still up. You're hurt, she moved without thinking, her hand reaching for his face, gentle fingers assessing the damage. It's nothing, just a disagreement about terms. His hand came up to cover hers, holding it against his cheek. You waited up. Someone had to make sure you kept your promise. I always keep my promises. But his voice was rough, and when his eyes met hers in the dim hallway light, she saw everything he wasn't saying, the fear, the relief, the bone-deep exhaustion of being constantly vigilant, constantly dangerous, constantly alone. Dylan, she whispered, and it was permission and question and declaration all at once. He moved before she could second-guess, backing her gently against the hallway wall, his hands framing her face with a tenderness that contradicted his reputation. Tell me to stop. No, Serena, I'm not a good man. I've done things that would make you. I don't care, and she didn't. In that moment, with his heartbeat thundering under her palm and his eyes searching hers for rejection, she didn't care about anything except that he was alive and here and real. I don't care what you've done. I care who you are, and I'm not scared of you. You should be, but I'm not. The last thread of his control snapped. He kissed her, not gently, not carefully, but with the desperation of a man who'd spent the night staring down his own mortality and come home to find something worth living for. Serena kissed him back, tasting coffee and danger and something that might have been hope. His hands tangled in her hair, hers fisted in his shirt, and for those perfect, reckless moments, nothing existed except this, them together, defying every logical reason why this was a catastrophically bad idea. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dylan rested his forehead against hers. This is insane, he murmured. Completely. I can't offer you normal, I can't offer you safe. My life is complicated, I know, I don't care. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Dylan, I'm not asking for forever. I'm not asking for anything except what you can give, but don't you dare pretend this isn't real. He laughed, the sound breaking somewhere in his chest. Real, God, Serena, this is the most real thing in my life right now. You and Liam, these dinners, these moments, everything else is just, he gestured vaguely, performance, necessity, but this is real. Then let it be real. She touched his face again, careful of the bruise. At least for tonight, let yourself have something good. Dylan's answer was another kiss, softer this time, almost reverent. When he finally stepped back, his eyes held something that looked dangerously like love. Stay, he said, not in the guest room. Stay with me, just stay. It was the vulnerability in his voice that decided her, the crack in his armor that let her see the lonely man underneath the dangerous reputation. Okay, she whispered, I'll stay. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together, and led her down the hallway to his bedroom. The door closed behind them with a soft click, shutting out the world and its complications for whatever stolen hours the night would give them. In the morning there would be consequences, questions, reality. But tonight, in the darkness of Dylan Scott's bedroom, with his arms around her and his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Serena let herself believe that love could conquer even the dangerous complications of a mafia boss's world. She'd learn soon enough how wrong she was. Morning came with cruel efficiency and the sound of small feet running down the hallway. Serena woke disoriented, wrapped in expensive sheets that smelled like Dylan's cologne, in a bed that definitely wasn't hers. Reality crashed back in waves, the kiss, the conversation, the decision to stay. Dylan's arm was still around her waist, his breathing deep and even against her neck. They were both fully clothed, she registered with relief. After the kissing, they'd simply held each other, talking in whispers until exhaustion claimed them both. Nothing had happened beyond that line, but somehow the intimacy of just sleeping together felt more significant than if they'd crossed it. Dad, Miss Serena, I'm hungry. Dylan jerked awake, years of ingrained vigilance bringing him from sleep to alert in seconds. His eyes found hers, and for a moment confusion flickered before memory caught up. His expression softened into something that made her chest ache. Good morning, he murmured. Good morning. Dad, Liam's voice was getting closer. We should, Dylan started. The bedroom door burst open. Liam stood in the doorway in Spider-Man pajamas, his hair standing up in 17 different directions, his mouth forming a perfect O of surprise. Miss Serena's in Dad's bed. Serena sat up so fast she nearly gave herself whiplash. Dylan was only marginally more composed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture she was learning meant he was recalculating his approach. Miss Serena stayed over because I got home very late, Dylan explained, his voice remarkably steady. She was worried about me, so she waited up. We fell asleep talking. It was technically true, also wildly incomplete. Liam's 5-year-old brain visibly processed this information. Does this mean Miss Serena is your girlfriend? The question hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Liam, Dylan started. Because Tommy's mom has a boyfriend and he stays over too. Tommy says it means they love each other. Liam's face brightened. Do you love each other? Serena felt like she'd been dipped in ice water. This was too much, too fast, too public. They hadn't even discussed what last night meant, and now they were being interrogated by a kindergartner with the subtlety of a prosecutor. Buddy, it's complicated, Dylan said carefully. Adult relationships are. Tommy says that's what grown-ups say when the answer is yes, but they don't want to admit it. Tommy's very wise for 5, Serena managed, her voice strangled. Liam studied them both with unsettling perception. Then he grinned, the kind of smile that suggested he'd just won something. I think it's good. Miss Serena makes you happy, Dad, and she makes good food. That's like the 2 most important things. He turned and ran back down the hallway, yelling something about being hungry enough to eat 1,000,000 pancakes. The silence he left behind felt loaded. So, Dylan said eventually. That happened. That definitely happened. Serena covered her face with her hands. I should go. I shouldn't have stayed. This was a mistake. Was it? Dylan's hand found hers, gently pulling it from her face, because it didn't feel like a mistake. Dylan, I clean toilets for a living. You run an empire. I'm nobody and you're. Don't, his voice turned sharp, don't diminish yourself. You're not nobody, Serena. You're the woman who saved my son. You're the woman who makes me remember I'm human. You're the woman he stopped, jaw tightening. You matter more than you know. But this is impossible, your world and mine have already collided. We're past the point of pretending otherwise. He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. I know this is complicated. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. But last night when I came home and you were here, waiting, worried about me, it meant something. Tell me it meant something to you too. It meant everything, she whispered, the truth escaping before she could cage it. And that's what scares me, because everything has a way of becoming nothing when reality catches up. Then we make our own reality here in this house with Liam. The outside world can wait. It was a beautiful fantasy. It was also probably doomed. But looking at Dylan in the morning light, his hair mussed and his defenses down, and his eyes holding more hope than a man in his position should allow himself, Serena couldn't bring herself to destroy it. Okay, she said, but we need to talk about this. Really talk, set boundaries, figure out what this is. Tonight, after Liam's in bed, we'll talk about everything. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, gentle and reverent. But right now, I believe my son is threatening to eat 1,000,000 pancakes. Only if I make them. Obviously. They made it through breakfast in a strange new dynamic, not quite a family, but not quite separate anymore either. Liam chattered happily between bites of pancakes, occasionally making observations like, Miss Serena uses the butter Dad likes, and you're sitting closer than normal, that made both adults extremely aware of how transparent they were. At 9, Serena's phone buzzed. Laurent, wondering where she was, she'd completely forgotten about work. I have to go, she said, already mentally calculating how much trouble she was in. My shift started an hour ago. Call in sick, Dylan suggested. I can't just. Serena, you stayed up until 2 a.m. taking care of my son, then got ambushed by him at 7. You're exhausted, take the day. I need this job, Dylan, I can't just skip because you spent the night with me. His tone was careful, neutral. Is that what you were going to say? Yes, no, maybe, I just mean I can't be irresponsible. Some of us don't have the luxury of. She stopped, realizing how that sounded. Dylan's expression shuddered. Of course, you should go. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Serena mentally cursed herself for ruining the moment, for letting fear and practicality poison something that had felt, however briefly, like it might actually work. Dylan. Miss Serena has to go to work, Liam. Say goodbye. Liam, sensing the shift in atmosphere, gave her a subdued hug. Will you come back? Of course I will, tonight like always. Promise, promise. But as she gathered her things and headed for the door, Dylan walked her out with the mechanical courtesy of a host seeing off a guest, and Serena felt the distance between them yawning open again. At the doorway, she turned. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. You meant exactly what you said, and you're not wrong. His voice was tired. I sometimes forget that my reality isn't universal, that not everyone can just decide to take a day off because they feel like it. That's not what I. Serena, just go to work. We'll talk tonight like we planned. She wanted to argue, to explain, to fix what she'd broken. But Laurent was blowing up her phone, and Dylan's walls were back up, and standing in the doorway trying to navigate the wreckage of the morning felt like trying to catch smoke. Tonight, she agreed and left before she could make things worse. The day at the Ivory Rose was brutal. Laurent was in rare form, alternating between theatrical sighs about her tardiness and pointed observations about her distraction. She scrubbed floors with more aggression than necessary, trying to work out the tangled knot of emotions in her chest. She loved Dylan, she was terrified of Dylan. She wanted this impossible thing between them to work. She knew it probably couldn't. At lunch, she sat in the back alley with her leftover pancakes. She'd wrapped some up before leaving, unable to let them go to waste, and called her best friend Tasha. So let me get this straight, Tasha said after Serena had word-vomited the entire situation. You're sleeping. With a. We didn't sleep together, we just slept together. With a mafia boss, his kid ships you, and you're having a crisis because you can't afford to miss work and he can. When you say it like that, it sounds insane because it is. Serena, girl, what are you doing? I don't know, Serena's voice cracked. I didn't plan this, I didn't want this, but he looks at me like I matter, Tasha, like I'm not just the help. And his son, God, his son is the sweetest kid and he's been through so much and I just want to fix it all for them. But you can't fix them, honey, you can't save them, that's not your job. Then what is? Protecting yourself, making sure that when this inevitably explodes, because it will, Serena, men like him don't end up with women like us in real life. You're not the one left picking up the pieces alone. The words stung because they were true, or at least they felt true in the harsh light of afternoon reality, sitting on a milk crate in an alley, eating pancakes that had gone cold. I have to go, Serena said quietly, my break's over. Just be careful, okay? I love you and I don't want to see you hurt. I know, love you too. But as Serena headed back inside, she knew it was too late for careful. She'd already fallen. The only question was whether Dylan would catch her or let her hit the ground. The rest of her shift dragged. By the time 6 o'clock rolled around, her usual time to head to Dylan's, Serena was exhausted, emotionally wrung out, and terrified of what the evening's conversation would bring. She almost didn't go, almost texted some excuse, but she'd promised Liam and she'd never broken a promise to that little boy. Plus, cowardice had never been her style. The townhouse felt different when she arrived, colder somehow, despite the warm lighting. Mrs. Chen answered the door. She was back from Philadelphia, and her expression suggested she knew exactly what had happened and disapproved strongly. Mr. Scott is in his office. Liam is doing homework in the kitchen. Mrs. Chen's tone could have frozen lava. He requested you wait until after dinner to speak with him. Of course, thank you, Mrs. Chen. Cooking felt mechanical tonight. Serena went through the motions of making chicken parmesan, Liam's favorite, but her heart wasn't in it. Liam seemed to sense something was off, quieter than usual, stealing worried glances at her while he worked on his math worksheet. Are you and Dad fighting? He asked finally. No, honey, we're just figuring some things out. Is it because of me, because I said you were his girlfriend? Serena's heart cracked. Oh, Liam, no, none of this is because of you. You're perfect, okay? Whatever happens between your dad and me, it has nothing to do with you being anything but wonderful. But if you're figuring things out, that means it might be bad, right? That's what Mom said before she left, that she needed to figure things out. The casual devastation in his voice nearly broke her. Serena abandoned the chicken, crouching down to Liam's level. Look at me, I'm not your mom, I'm not leaving you. Even if things get complicated with your dad, even if we have to change how this works, I'm not disappearing. You understand? You promise? I promise. Liam hugged her fiercely, his small arms surprisingly strong. Over his head, Serena saw Dylan standing in the doorway. How long he'd been there, she didn't know, but the expression on his face, raw and grateful and devastated all at once, suggested he'd heard everything. Their eyes met across the kitchen, and in that moment, Serena understood that whatever conversation they had tonight, whatever they decided, it couldn't just be about them anymore. It was about a 5-year-old who'd already lost one parent and couldn't survive losing another. Dinner was quiet, the kind of silence that felt like a living thing occupying the fourth chair at their table. Liam tried to fill it with chatter about school, but even his resilient energy couldn't quite dispel the tension threading between the two adults. At 8:30, Dylan took Liam up for bedtime. Serena cleaned the kitchen with methodical precision, buying herself time to prepare for whatever conversation was coming. She was drying the last plate when Dylan reappeared, 2 glasses of wine in his hands. I don't usually drink on weeknights, she said, accepting the glass anyway. Tonight feels like an exception kind of night. They moved to the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch, a careful distance that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. Dylan looked exhausted, the bruise on his jaw now a deep purple, his shoulders carrying weight that had nothing to do with physical burden. I'm sorry, they said simultaneously, then stopped. You first, Dylan offered. Serena took a breath. I'm sorry for this morning, for making you feel like I was throwing our differences in your face. That's not what I meant. I panicked, because this is real now, whatever this is, and real things can hurt you. I know, and I'm sorry for shutting down, for putting walls up when things got complicated. He swirled the wine in his glass, not drinking. I'm not good at this, Serena. Relationships, vulnerability, letting people see behind the mask. The last woman I trusted with that left my son behind like he was a coat she'd grown tired of wearing. I'm not her. I know you're not, that's what terrifies me. He finally looked at her, and the naked fear in his eyes stole her breath. Because if I let myself love you, really love you, and you leave, I don't know if Liam could survive it. I don't know if I could. Dylan. Let me finish, please. He set down his wine glass, hands clasping together like he needed something to hold. My life is dangerous, not metaphorically, actually dangerous. The meeting last night, I was negotiating with people who wanted me dead, who still want me dead. I walked into that room knowing I might not walk out, and the only thing that kept me sharp, kept me fighting, was the thought of coming home, to Liam and to you. Serena's throat tightened. But that also means you're a target now. Anyone who wants to hurt me will look at you and see leverage, will see weakness, and I can't. His voice cracked. I can't put you in that position. I can't make you a casualty of my choices. That's my decision to make, not yours. Is it because I don't think you understand what you're signing up for, the constant security, the looking over your shoulder, the knowledge that any day could be the day someone decides you're a useful pawn in a game you didn't ask to play? Dylan's hands tightened into fists. My ex-wife couldn't handle it. She lasted 3 years before the stress broke her, and she was born into this life. You're what? Not strong enough, Serena's voice sharpened. Not sophisticated enough, let me guess. I'm just the help, so how could I possibly understand your complicated, dangerous world? That's not what I said. It's what you meant. She stood, anger and hurt warring in her chest. You know what, Dylan, you're right. I don't come from money. I don't come from power. I come from a world where we fight different battles, where keeping the lights on is a victory and making it through the month without overdraft fees is a win. But don't you dare pretend that makes me weak. I never said you were weak. You're saying I can't handle your life, that I'll break under the pressure. That's exactly what you're saying. I'm saying I don't want to be the reason you get hurt. Dylan was on his feet now too, voice rising. I'm saying that caring about you is dangerous for both of us, and maybe we need to step back before someone pays a price we can't afford. The words landed like a slap. Serena felt something inside her chest crack open, bleeding out all the hope she'd been carefully tending. So that, you kiss me, you hold me, you make me believe this could work, and then you decide it's too hard and walk away. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protection, Dylan, I need honesty. I need you to stop making decisions for me like I'm some delicate thing that needs to be kept safe from reality. She grabbed her bag, blinking back tears that she refused to let fall. You want to know the real difference between your world and mine? In my world, when we love someone, we fight for them. We don't give up because it's complicated or scary or dangerous. We show up anyway. Serena, wait. I'll still cook for Liam because I promised him and I keep my promises. But you and me, we're done, you win. You successfully protected me from the terrible danger of caring about you. She was halfway to the door when it burst open. Thomas Dillon's head of security, the one who texted her last night, stood in the doorway, gun drawn, his face grim. We need to move now, they found the house. Everything happened in terrible slow motion. Dillon's hand on her arm pulling her away from the door. Thomas speaking urgently into a radio. The sound of footsteps, multiple sets coming from outside, and then glass shattering in the front room, the concussive pop that Serena's brain registered as gunfire half a second before Dillon tackled her to the floor. Liam, Dillon's voice was raw terror. I've got him, another voice, another security person Serena had never seen before, carrying a sleepy, confused Liam down the stairs. More gunshots, the lights went out, someone was screaming. It took Serena a moment to realize it was her. Dillon was over her, his body a shield, one hand on her head holding her down, the other holding a gun she hadn't known he had. The safe room, Thomas barked, go. Dillon hauled Serena to her feet, propelling her toward his office. She caught a glimpse of Liam, his face white with terror, being carried by the guard. Then they were in Dillon's office, Thomas pushing a bookshelf aside to reveal a reinforced door that belonged in a bank vault, not a townhouse. They tumbled inside, Dillon, Serena, Liam, Thomas, and the other guard. The door slammed shut with a pneumatic hiss that sounded horribly final. The room was small, maybe 10 by 10, lined with monitors showing security camera feeds. On the screens, Serena could see armed men moving through Dillon's house with military precision. Daddy, I'm scared, Liam was crying, reaching for Dillon with both arms. Dillon holstered his gun and pulled his son close, but his eyes were on the monitors, his body coiled with tension. It's okay, buddy, we're safe here, I promise. Who are they? Serena heard herself ask, her voice distant and strange. The Volkov family, Dillon's tone was ice. Russians, we've been negotiating territory. Last night's meeting was supposed to finalize terms. Apparently they decided to renegotiate with bullets instead. On the monitors, one of the intruders was in the kitchen, her kitchen. He casually swept a bowl off the counter, and Serena watched it shatter with surreal detachment. Another was in Liam's room, tossing the space like he was looking for something. What do they want? She whispered. Me dead, and probably anyone associated with me as a message. Dillon's arm tightened around Liam. They knew about this house. This address isn't public record, someone talked. Or someone followed her. Thomas nodded at Serena, and 6 sets of eyes turned toward her. What? No, I didn't, I wouldn't. You showed up today, and 6 hours later we have a hit squad. Thomas's voice was flat, professional. That's not a coincidence. Thomas, stand down, Dillon ordered. Serena didn't. With respect, boss, you're not thinking clearly. She's the new variable, the timing. It's because they've been watching for weeks, waiting for the right moment. But Dillon's eyes had gone cold, assessing, looking at her the way he probably looked at business rivals, calculating risk. Serena, did anyone follow you today? Did you notice anything unusual? No, I came straight from work, same as always. Dillon, you can't possibly think. I don't, but Thomas is right. We need to consider all possibilities. The words hurt worse than the gunfire. After everything, after he'd held her and kissed her and made her believe she mattered, he was looking at her like she might be the threat. Check her phone, Thomas said. Absolutely not. Check it, Dillon's voice was flat. We need to be sure. Serena handed it over with shaking hands, watching as Thomas scrolled through her messages, her calls, her apps, looking for evidence that she'd betrayed them, looking for proof that she was exactly what his ex-wife had been, someone who'd hurt him. Clean, Thomas admitted grudgingly. No suspicious contacts, no tracking apps. Of course it's clean, Serena's voice cracked, because I didn't do anything. God, Dillon, you really think I had to check, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. In my world, you always check. Your world is poison. She was crying now, couldn't stop. You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe we should end this, because I can't love someone who looks at me like I'm a suspect the moment things go wrong. Serena. Movement on the south perimeter, one of the guards interrupted. Looks like they're pulling out, police sirens. On the monitors, the intruders were indeed retreating, melting into the night as efficiently as they'd arrived. Within 90 seconds, the house was empty except for the wreckage they'd left behind. Give it 10 minutes, Thomas advised. Make sure it's not a feint. 10 minutes in a room smaller than most closets, with Dylan holding his son and Serena pressed against the opposite wall, feeling like every word she'd spoken about trust and fighting for love had been shredded by reality. Finally, Thomas deemed it safe. They emerged into Dylan's destroyed home, furniture overturned, glass everywhere, bullet holes in the walls. Liam was sobbing against his father's shoulder, too overwhelmed to even speak. "I'm calling you a car," Dylan said to Serena, his voice professional. "Empty. Thomas will make sure you get home safely. I'll have someone check your apartment, make sure they don't know where you live." "That's it, you're just sending me away." "I'm keeping you alive." He finally looked at her and his eyes were dead. "You were right earlier. This is too dangerous. We can't do this. It's not safe for you. It's not safe for Liam. I'm ending this before someone gets killed." "Dylan, please just go." His voice cracked on the last word. "I can't watch you die because of me. I can't. So please, Serena, just go." Every instinct screamed at her to fight, to argue, to refuse to leave. But Liam was traumatized, Dylan was shutting down, and she was standing in a house that had just been shot to pieces by people who wanted her. What dead as leverage? She thought she understood what she was getting into. She'd been catastrophically wrong. "I'll still cook for Liam," she heard herself say. "Somewhere else, somewhere safe, he needs." "No," Dylan's tone was final. "I'll hire someone, a professional, someone with security clearance. This arrangement is over." The arrangement, that's all it had been to him, an arrangement that had outlived its usefulness. "I see," her voice sounded hollow. "Well, goodbye then, Mr. Scott." She walked toward the door, glass crunching under her feet. Behind her, Liam started crying harder, calling her name. She didn't turn around, couldn't, because if she saw Dylan's face, saw that little boy reaching for her, she'd break completely. Thomas escorted her to a car, not the nice one with leather seats, but a standard SUV with a driver who didn't make small talk. The ride to her apartment was silent. She made it inside, locked the door, and then, finally, let herself fall apart. She'd fallen in love with a mafia boss and his broken son. She'd let herself believe that love could bridge the gap between their worlds. She'd been wrong on every count. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that she'd promised Liam she wouldn't leave. But apparently some promises were impossible to keep. Chapter 8. 3 weeks passed like a wound that wouldn't close, painful, persistent, impossible to ignore. Serena threw herself into work with the dedication of someone trying to outrun their own thoughts. She picked up extra shifts at the Ivory Rose, scrubbed floors until her hands cracked, and avoided the breakfast nook where she'd served Dylan and Liam countless meals. Laurent noticed but surprisingly said nothing. Even his criticism came gentler these days, like he recognized someone operating on the edge of breaking. Tasha came over most nights, bringing wine and takeout and steadfast refusal to say, "I told you so," even though she had every right. "Yo, heard anything?" Tasha asked one Friday night, perched on Serena's threadbare couch with Chinese food containers spread between them. "No, nothing. It's like they never existed." Serena stabbed at her lo mein without appetite. "I keep thinking I'll see them, at the restaurant or on the street, but nothing." "Maybe that's good." Clean break. "Yeah, clean, except nothing about this felt clean. It felt like amputation without anesthesia." Her phone buzzed, unknown number. Her heart did that stupid, hopeful leap before she reminded herself that Dylan wouldn't call. He'd made his choice. She'd been a liability, and he'd cut his losses. The text read, "Corner of 5th and Madison, 10 p.m., come alone, important." "That's not ominous at all," Tasha said, reading over her shoulder. "You're not actually going right." "I don't know. What if it's about Liam? What if something's wrong? Or what if it's the Russian mob people trying to finish the job?" "Valid point," Serena stared at the message, weighing risk against the desperate need to know. "If I'm not back by midnight, call the police." "Serena, I have to know." "Tasha, I have to." The corner of 5th and Madison was in a neighborhood that had gentrified about halfway, fancy coffee shops next to check cashing places, the kind of area where two worlds existed in uncomfortable proximity. Serena arrived at 9:55, her finger hovering over 911, ready to dial at the first sign of danger. A figure stepped out of the shadows, not Dylan, not Thomas. A woman mid-50s, elegantly dressed, with steel gray hair pulled back in a familiar tight bun. "Mrs. Chen." "You came," the older woman said, no surprise in her voice. "Good. What do you want?" Serena's hand stayed on her phone. "To talk about Liam." Mrs. Chen gestured to a nearby bench. "Please, I'm not here to hurt you." Against her better judgment, Serena sat. Mrs. Chen settled beside her, and for a long moment they both stared at the street, watching cars pass in relative silence. "He's not eating again," Mrs. Chen said finally. Serena's chest constricted. "What?" "Mr. Scott hired a professional chef, very qualified, culinary school in France, worked for senators. The food is impeccable." She paused. "Liam won't touch it. He asks for you every night. Where's Miss Serena? When is she coming back?" "Dylan made it clear I'm not welcome." Mr. Scott is a fool, the bluntness startled them both. Mrs. Chen's expression softened marginally. I've worked for the Scott family for 15 years. I watched Dylan grow from an angry young man trying to fill his father's shoes into whatever he is now, powerful, dangerous, alone, until you. Mrs. Chen. I didn't like you at first, the older woman continued. I thought you were another opportunist, someone who saw a wealthy man and a vulnerable child and calculated how to exploit them. I was wrong. Serena's throat tightened. You loved them, both of them, and that terrified Dylan. More than any Russian hit squad ever could. Mrs. Chen turned to face her directly. You want to know what happened after you left? He tripled Liam's security, moved them to a safe house. Spends every moment he's not handling business staring at that little boy like he's watching him disappear in real time. And Liam, that child is breaking, Miss Mason, slowly, quietly, but breaking nonetheless. Then why are you here? Why tell me this if Dylan doesn't want me around? Because Mr. Scott doesn't know what he wants. He spent his entire life building walls, keeping people at a distance where they can't hurt him. You got past those walls, made him vulnerable, made him hope. And when that hope almost got you killed, he did what he always does. He pushed you away to protect you. Some protection. He looked at me like I was a suspect, like I might have led them there. He had to check. In his world, trust is a luxury that gets people killed. Mrs. Chen's expression turned almost sympathetic, but I saw his face when Thomas cleared your phone. He looked like he'd been given a reprieve from execution. And then he sent you away anyway because he's convinced that loving you is a death sentence. So what am I supposed to do with that information? Fight for him, for them, the way you said you would. Mrs. Chen stood, smoothing her practical skirt. Tomorrow is Liam's 6th birthday. They're at the estate in Connecticut, the safe house. Dylan is planning a party that Liam won't enjoy because the only person he wants there is you. She pulled out a card, handed it to Serena, an address, security codes, gate combinations. This is insane, Serena whispered. If Dylan finds out you gave me this, then he'll fire me and I'll retire with the generous severance package I've been accumulating for 15 years. Mrs. Chen's smile was thin. Miss Mason, I've watched that man lose his wife, his trust, his ability to believe in anything good. You gave him that back. You gave his son a reason to smile again. If you think I'm going to stand by and watch him destroy that because he's too stubborn and scared to fight for what matters, you don't know me very well. She walked away, disappearing into the night as efficiently as she'd appeared, leaving Serena sitting on a bench with a card that felt like dynamite in her hand. She should throw it away, should respect Dylan's decision, should protect herself from more heartbreak. But she thought about Liam asking for her every night, about Dylan staring at his son and seeing only loss, about the promise she'd made that she wouldn't disappear. Some promises were impossible to keep, others just required more courage than seemed reasonable. Serena looked at the address, Connecticut, a 2-hour drive. She'd need to borrow Tasha's car, would need to take tomorrow off work, the Saturday shift that Laurent would absolutely kill her for missing, would need to walk back into Dylan Scott's life and face whatever consequences came with it. She pulled out her phone and texted Tasha, I need your car tomorrow, and maybe bail money, possibly also a character witness for the inevitable restraining order. The response came immediately. This is the worst idea you've ever had. What time should I have the car ready? 6 a.m. I want to beat the traffic. You're insane. I love you. Don't die. I'll try. Serena went home and didn't sleep. She spent the night alternating between packing a bag and convincing herself this was a terrible idea. By 5 a.m., she'd settled on it being a terrible idea that she was doing anyway, which pretty much summed up her entire relationship with Dylan Scott. At 5:30, she showered and dressed carefully. Not too formal, she wasn't trying to impress, but not her work clothes either. She settled on jeans and a soft green sweater that Tasha once said made her eyes look warm. She wanted to look like herself, like Serena, not like she was trying to be someone she wasn't. At 6 a.m., she climbed into Tasha's slightly beat-up Honda with a gift bag containing the present she'd bought for Liam weeks ago, before everything had exploded. A children's cookbook with pictures of kids making simple recipes. She'd imagined teaching him to make pancakes, imagined his small hands learning to crack eggs, imagined a future that now seemed foolishly optimistic. The drive to Connecticut was long and gave her far too much time to think. What would she say? What if Dylan refused to even see her? What if seeing Liam again broke her completely? What if she was making a massive mistake? Somewhere around our 90 minutes passing through towns that got progressively more expensive, Serena realized that the only real mistake would be not trying. Dylan had pushed her away to protect her. Noble, stupid, but she got it. He'd already lost one person who couldn't handle his life. He was trying to spare her the same fate. Except she wasn't his ex-wife. She wasn't built from the same privileged cloth that tore at the first sign of strain. She'd survived poverty, absent fathers, grinding work, and a world that constantly tried to make her invisible. She could survive Dylan Scott's dangerous life. If he'd let her. The estate appeared around a curve, massive, gated, the kind of place that had a name instead of just an address. Serena's courage wobbled. This was where Dylan went to feel safe. She was about to invade that sanctuary uninvited. She almost turned around. But then she thought about Liam asking where she was every night, and she pressed the intercom button at the gate. Yes, a male voice, security. My name is Serena Mason. I'm here for Liam's birthday party. Technically true, even if she wasn't invited. A pause, then you're not on the list. I know, but I have the codes. She read off the numbers Mrs. Chen had given her. Please, I need to see him, just for a minute. Another pause, longer this time. Serena imagined phone calls. Being made, Dylan being consulted, her about to be turned away. Then the gate swung open. Drive up to the main house, someone will meet you there. Serena's hands shook on the steering wheel as she navigated the long driveway. The house at the end of it was more mansion than home, stone and windows and enough square footage to house a small village. But she could see signs of life, balloons tied to the front porch, streamers, the preparations for a 6-year-old's birthday party. A figure waited at the front door, Dylan. He looked different, harder somehow, like the past 3 weeks had carved away something essential. He wore jeans and a simple black t-shirt, dressed down but no less intimidating. His expression when he saw her was unreadable. Serena parked and got out, clutching Liam's present like a shield. The distance between the car and the front steps felt infinite. You shouldn't be here, Dylan said when she was close enough to hear. His voice was flat, empty. What? No. This is a secure location. Giving you those codes put us all at risk. I know. I told you we were done, I was clear. You were. Serena climbed the steps until she was eye level with him. But I promised Liam I wouldn't leave, and I don't break promises to 6-year-olds. He's not 6 until tomorrow. Today, his birthday is today, Dylan, November 16th. Something flickered in his expression, surprised that she remembered, maybe, or something deeper. How did you, Mrs. Chen? She gave you the codes. Don't fire her, she was trying to help. Help? Dylan's laugh was bitter. By bringing you to the one place I thought we'd be safe from complications. I'm not a complication, I'm a woman who loves your son and wants to wish him happy birthday. She paused. And I'm a woman who loves you, even though you're being an idiot about it. You shouldn't love me. Probably not, but I do anyway. Funny how love doesn't ask permission. They stood facing each other on the grand front steps of a mansion that probably cost more than Serena would make in 10 lifetimes, and for a moment, neither spoke. The morning sun was rising behind her, casting long shadows, and Dylan looked exhausted and dangerous, and so heartbreakingly alone that Serena wanted to reach for him. I can't keep you safe, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I can't promise you won't get hurt because of me, I can't. Miss Serena. The door burst open and Liam flew out, slamming into her legs with the force of a small missile. His arms wrapped around her waist, and he was crying and laughing and talking all at once. You came, Dad said you couldn't, but you're here. It's my birthday and you're here. Serena dropped to her knees, pulling him into a proper hug, and felt her own tears start to fall. Of course I came, sweetheart, I promised, didn't I? You promised. Liam pulled back to look at her, his face blotchy but beaming. I knew you'd keep your promise. I told Dad you would, but he said it was too dangerous, but I knew. Over Liam's head, Serena met Dylan's eyes. His expression had finally cracked, all that careful control fracturing to reveal the raw emotion underneath, relief and fear and hope, and something that looked dangerously like love. Well, Dylan said roughly, I suppose you'd better come inside. It wasn't a declaration of love, it wasn't a solution to all their problems, but it was a start. And sometimes Serena was learning, starts were enough. Chapter 9. Inside of the Connecticut estate was somehow both grander and emptier than Serena expected. High ceilings, expensive furniture, and the kind of tasteful decor that screamed interior designer rather than home. But in the massive living room, someone, probably Mrs. Chen, had attempted to make it festive. Balloons clustered in corners, a happy birthday banner stretched across the fireplace, and a table groaned under the weight of presents wrapped in expensive paper. It looked like a party. It felt like a museum exhibit of what a party should be. The chef made a cake, Liam was saying, tugging Serena toward the dining room. It has 3 layers and it's chocolate, but I don't think it'll taste like your chocolate cake because nothing does. I'm sure it'll be delicious, Serena said, but even she could hear the hollowness in her voice. The cake was indeed impressive, a professional confection with perfect fondant and elaborate decorations. It probably cost more than Serena's rent. It also looked about as inviting as a sculpture, beautiful but untouchable. When do I get to eat it? Liam asked. After lunch, Dylan said, appearing behind them. He'd regained some of his composure, though his eyes kept tracking to Serena like he couldn't quite believe she was real. Speaking of which, Chef Bernard is preparing your favorites. He's not Miss Serena, Liam said with devastating simplicity. No, but he's very good at. I don't want good, I want Miss Serena's food. The silence that followed was painful. Dylan's jaw tightened, and Serena could see him calculating responses, weighing options, trying to find a way to give his son what he wanted without admitting that he wanted it too. I could make lunch, Serena heard herself offer. If that's okay, I didn't bring ingredients, but if you have a kitchen, I could probably. You don't have to. I want to. Let me do this for him, Dylan, please. Their eyes met, held. In that moment, all the complicated history between them compressed into a single question. Could they do this? Could they find a way to coexist in this space, for Liam's sake if nothing else? The kitchen is through there, Dylan said finally, gesturing. Chef Bernard has Saturdays off. I'll show you where everything is. The kitchen was predictably enormous. Commercial-grade appliances, marble countertops, enough space to cook for an army. It was also sterile. Barely used, like all the other rooms in this beautiful, empty house. Serena moved through the space, opening cabinets, checking the refrigerator, taking inventory with practiced efficiency. Dylan leaned against the counter, watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. You're really here, he said quietly. I'm really here. I thought I convinced myself it was safer if you weren't, if we just ended it clean. There's nothing clean about this, Dylan. Serena pulled out chicken, vegetables, pasta. We didn't end because we stopped caring. We ended because you got scared. I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself, she turned to face him. And I get it, I do, your wife left. The one person you trusted enough to build a life with abandoned your son. That kind of betrayal leaves scars, but I'm not her. I know you're not. Do you? Because 3 weeks ago you looked at me like I might have betrayed you, like I might have led killers to your door. And even after my phone was clean, even after there was no evidence, you still sent me away. Not because I was actually dangerous, but because letting me stay meant trusting me, believing that I wouldn't leave when things got hard. Dylan flinched like she'd struck him. They shot up my house with you in it, with Liam in it. I almost got you killed, Serena. How am I supposed to live with that? Same way I'm supposed to live with loving someone who pushes me away every time he gets scared. She moved closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in his eyes, the exhaustion etched into his face. Dylan, love is a risk. It always has been. You can't guarantee my safety any more than I can guarantee I won't hurt you. That's not how this works, but we can choose to fight for each other anyway, or we can let fear win and spend the rest of our lives wondering what might have been. I can't lose you. Then stop pushing me away. The space between them felt charged, electric. Dylan's hand came up, hesitating inches from her face like he was afraid she might disappear if he touched her. I don't know how to do this, he admitted, his voice raw. How to let someone in, how to be vulnerable. Everything in my life has taught me that vulnerability gets you killed. Then let me teach you something different. Serena caught his hand, pressed it to her cheek. Let me show you that vulnerability can also save you. Dylan's breath shuddered out, his thumb traced her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. I love you. God help me, Serena. I love you so much it terrifies me. Good, I'd hate to be terrified alone. He laughed, the sound breaking somewhere in his chest, and then he was kissing her, not with the desperate passion of 3 weeks ago, but with something deeper. Something that tasted like promise and hope and the tentative beginning of trust. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Dylan rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered, not just for lunch, not just for today. Stay, help me figure out how to do this, how to be someone worthy of what you're offering. You're already worthy, Dylan, you just have to believe it. Guys, Liam's voice interrupted from the doorway. Are you kissing? Because Tommy says that means you're definitely in love now. They sprang apart like teenagers caught by parents. Liam stood in the doorway with Thomas behind him, the security chief's expression carefully neutral, though Serena could swear she saw amusement in his eyes. Sorry to interrupt, Thomas said, not sounding sorry at all, but we have a situation. Every muscle in Dylan's body went rigid. What kind of situation? The good kind, actually. Mikhail Volkov is at the gate, says he wants to talk. No weapons, no backup, just him and a birthday present for Liam. That's insane, it's obviously a trap. Probably, but he's also right that he could have hit us a dozen times in the past 3 weeks and didn't, and he specifically asked for you to bring the woman who cooks. Thomas's eyes flicked to Serena. Apparently you've become relevant to Russian mob politics. Congratulations. This is not happening, Dylan said flatly. Serena is not going anywhere near. I'll go, Serena surprised herself with the words. If he wants to talk, let's talk. What's the worst that can happen? You could die, Dylan said, his voice strangled. That's the worst that can happen. You could die, and I'd have to live with the knowledge that I let you walk into danger. Or I could help resolve whatever this is. Dylan, you said yourself they haven't attacked in 3 weeks. Maybe Volkov wants to negotiate. Maybe I'm somehow part of that negotiation. She turned to Thomas. Can you guarantee my safety? No, Thomas said honestly, but I can provide enough firepower that attacking you would be suicide. And Volkov's smart, he doesn't do suicide missions. Serena, no. Dylan, she caught his face between her hands, forcing him to look at her. You said you love me, you said you want me to stay. That means trusting me to make my own choices, even dangerous ones, especially dangerous ones, because if we're doing this, if we're really trying to make this work, you can't keep me in a cage to keep me safe. I can't lose you. You won't, but you have to let me stand beside you, not behind you. Partners, remember, we face the dangerous stuff together. Dylan looked like he was being torn in half. Finally, he turned to Thomas. Full tactical team. Snipers on the roof. If Volkov so much as breathes wrong, you take him out. Understood? Understood. And I'm going to. Dylan. Non-negotiable. If you're walking into danger, I'm right there with you. His hand found hers, squeezed together, like you said. They assembled in the estate's grand foyer, Dylan, Serena, Thomas, and 4 other security personnel who looked like they could bench press cars. Through the front windows, Serena could see a black Mercedes at the gate, a single figure standing beside it. Mikhail Volkov was not what she expected. She'd pictured someone large and brutish, all menace and violence. Instead, the man walking up the drive was her father's age, distinguished looking in an expensive suit, carrying a wrapped present and looking for all the world like a man arriving at a child's birthday party. Which technically he was. Mr. Scott, Volkov said when he reached comfortable speaking distance. His English was lightly accented, his tone polite. Thank you for seeing me. I know this is unorthodox. You shot up my house, you tried to kill my family. Unorthodox is not the word I'd use. Dylan's voice was ice. Yes, about that, Volkov had the grace to look uncomfortable. I came to apologize and to explain. You have 60 seconds before my people escort you off my property, permanently. Volkov nodded as if this was reasonable. 3 weeks ago, my nephew Alexei ordered the hit on your townhouse. He believed you were weak because you'd fallen in love. His eyes found Serena, with her, the woman who cleaned floors at the Ivory Rose. He thought this made you vulnerable, easy to eliminate. Your nephew was wrong, Dylan said flatly. Yes, very wrong. Unfortunately, by the time I learned of his plan and ordered him to stand down, the team was already in motion. Volkov's expression hardened. Alexei has been dealt with. He will not trouble you again. In fact, he will not trouble anyone again. His judgment was poor, and in our line of work, poor judgment has permanent consequences. Serena felt Dylan's hand tighten on hers. But I also came to tell you something else, Volkov continued. For weeks, I've been trying to understand why my nephew was so convinced you were weak, why he thought love made you vulnerable instead of stronger. He looked at Serena again, really looked at her, his gaze assessing but not unkind. Then I had someone research you, Miss Mason. Do you know what I learned? I'm sure you're going to tell me. Smile ghosted across Volkov's face. You're 25, you support yourself and send money to your mother and brothers. You work 2 jobs, take online classes, and still find time to cook for a child who isn't yours because he needs you. You walked into Dylan Scott's life as an employee and became essential not through manipulation or calculation, but through genuine care. He paused. That kind of strength, the quiet kind, the persistent kind, is more dangerous than any weapon. Because it can't be bought, can't be intimidated, and can't be killed. Is there a point to this? Dylan asked tightly. The point is that my nephew was right about one thing. She does make you vulnerable. But he failed to understand that vulnerability is not weakness. A man with nothing to lose is reckless. A man with everything to lose is careful, strategic, willing to do whatever it takes to protect what matters. Volkov's expression turned serious. 3 weeks ago, you negotiated a peace treaty that was marginally in my favor. Then I attacked your home. You could have retaliated, should have, by the rules of our world. Instead, you moved your family to safety, reinforced security, and waited. Because you knew I hadn't authorized the attack, because attacking back would have started a war that might hurt the people you love. Get to the point, Mikhail. The point is that you've changed. You used to be a man who burned bridges and salted earth. Now you're a man who builds instead of destroys, who chooses peace over vengeance. Volkov nodded to Serena. Because of her, and that makes you someone I can work with, someone I can trust. So I came here to apologize for my nephew's actions, to assure you he's been handled, and to renegotiate our agreement, with terms that are actually fair this time. Dylan was quiet for a long moment. Serena could practically see him calculating angles, assessing truth versus manipulation, weighing risk against opportunity. And the present, he asked finally, is actually a present for the boy. My granddaughter is his age, she recommended it, something about robots and dinosaurs. Volkov extended the package carefully. I understand if you don't trust me, but I'm hoping we can start building that trust for both our sakes. Thomas stepped forward to accept the package, would probably x-ray it 17 different ways before letting Liam anywhere near it. Dylan studied Volkov with the intensity of a man reading a contract in a language he didn't quite speak. We'll renegotiate, he said finally. Fair terms, no more games, and if anyone from your organization even looks at my family wrong, I don't care about peace treaties or strategic alliances. I will burn your empire to the ground. Are we clear? Crystal clear, and believe me, Mr. Scott, I have grandchildren too. I understand the impulse. Volkov offered a slight bow, then turned to Serena. Miss Mason, Dylan Scott is a dangerous man, but I think you know that already. The question is whether you're brave enough to stay anyway. I'm still here, aren't I? Indeed you are, Volkov smiled. Then may I offer some unsolicited advice? Don't let him protect you from his world. Make him teach you to navigate it. A partner who understands the darkness is worth more than 1,000 who require shelter from it. With that, he nodded to them both and walked back down the drive, climbed into his Mercedes, and disappeared through the gate like he'd never been there at all. The silence that followed felt apocalyptic. Well, Thomas said eventually, that was either the most honest conversation we've ever had with the Volkovs, or we're all about to die in a very elaborate trap. Always so optimistic, Dylan murmured, but some of the tension had drained from his shoulders. He turned to Serena. You okay? I just got vouched for by a Russian mob boss. I'm not sure okay covers. Welcome to my world. Our world, she corrected. If we're doing this, it's our world, our danger, our choices. Dylan pulled her close, right there in front of Thomas and the security team and anyone who might be watching. Our world, he agreed. God help us both. Dad, Miss Serena, Liam's voice echoed from inside. Can we eat now? I'm starving. And just like that, the surreal danger of the past few minutes evaporated, replaced by the simple reality of a 6-year-old's impatience. Dylan laughed, a real laugh, the kind that sounded like relief and joy and the tentative beginning of happiness. Come on, Serena said, tugging him back toward the house. I promised him lunch, and I never break promises. No, Dylan said softly, his eyes holding hers. You don't, that's one of the things I love about you. Lunch was chaotic and perfect. Serena made simple pasta, the kind Liam loved, with butter and parmesan and nothing fancy. They ate at the kitchen table instead of the formal dining room, and Liam talked nonstop about school and friends, and the robot dinosaur thing he hoped was in Volkov's present. Thomas had cleared it. It was, in fact, a toy combining robots and dinosaurs in ways that defied both logic and physics. Mrs. Chen appeared midway through the meal, took one look at the scene, and allowed herself the tiniest satisfied smile before retreating to wherever she went when she wasn't orchestrating people's lives. After lunch came presents, too many as expected, but Liam's genuine delight made even the excess feel justified. And then, finally, the cake. Can Miss Serena cut it? Liam asked. She's good at making food look pretty. So Serena cut the professional confection into slightly uneven slices, and they sang Happy Birthday off-key, and Liam blew out his candles with enough enthusiasm to power a small windmill. What did you wish for? Dylan asked. Can't tell, then it won't come true, but Liam looked at Serena, then at his father. And his smile suggested his wish had already been granted. Later, after Liam had been wrestled into bed, overtired and overcaffeinated but happy, Dylan found Serena on the back terrace, looking out at grounds that probably required a full-time staff to maintain. Hey, he said softly, joining her at the railing. Hey yourself. Thank you for coming, for staying, for everything. You already thanked me. I know, but I don't think I can thank you enough. Dylan turned to face her, his expression serious. Serena, I meant what I said earlier. I love you, and I want us to work, but my life is complicated, dangerous. It's always going to be dangerous. I can't change that. I'm not asking you to. I know, but I need you to understand what you're signing up for. There will be more nights like tonight, more Volkovs at the gate, more decisions that could get us killed. Can you really live with that? Serena thought about it, really thought about it, about the fear she'd felt. 3 weeks ago when bullets shattered Dylan's windows, about the terror of thinking she might lose him, about the risk of loving someone whose job description included might get murdered by rival crime families. Then she thought about Liam's smile, about Dylan's rare laughter, about feeling for the first time in her life like she was exactly where she belonged. I grew up poor, she said finally, really poor, the kind of poor where you eat cereal for dinner because there's nothing else, where you wear the same shoes until they literally fall apart, where every day is a fight just to survive. She turned to face him. You know what I learned from that? That safety is an illusion. Rich or poor, powerful or powerless, life is dangerous. The only question is whether the danger is worth it. And you're worth it, Liam's worth it. This, she gestured between them, is worth it. So yeah, Dylan, I can live with danger, as long as I get to live with you. Dylan's kiss was his answer, deep and grateful and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Move in with us, he said, not as staff, not as Liam's cook, as my partner, my equal. Someone who helps me navigate this impossible life and makes it worth living. That's a big step. I know, but I'm tired of taking small ones. I love you, Serena Mason. I want to build a life with you, a real one. Messy and complicated and probably occasionally terrifying, but real. What do you say? Serena thought about her tiny apartment, about the life she'd carefully constructed from nothing, about the independence she'd fought so hard to achieve. Then she thought about Liam asking for her every night, about Dylan's rare smiles, about becoming part of something bigger than just survival. I say yes on one condition. Name it. I keep working at the Ivory Rose, part-time at least. I need something that's mine, something outside this world. Can you live with that? Can I live with you having independence and identity outside of our relationship? Dylan smiled. Serena, that's not a condition, that's a requirement. I don't want to own you. I want to partner with you. Big difference. Then yes, I'll move in, I'll help you raise Liam. I'll learn to navigate your dangerous world. And maybe, if we're very lucky and very careful, we'll figure out how to make this impossible thing work. I love you. I love you too, even though you're a mobster with trust issues and a tendency to push people away when you get scared. And I love you even though you're stubborn and reckless and have a completely unreasonable faith in the power of good food to solve problems. My faith is not unreasonable. I solved your problem, didn't I? You solved everything. Dylan pulled her close and they stood there on the terrace as the sun set over Connecticut, two people from impossible different worlds who'd somehow found a way to build a bridge between them. Inside, Liam slept peacefully, probably dreaming of robot dinosaurs and birthday cakes. In her quarters somewhere, Mrs. Chen was undoubtedly feeling very satisfied with her matchmaking skills, and in the gatehouse, Thomas was probably running security protocols while secretly placing bets on how long this relationship would last. But out on the terrace, with Dylan's arms around her and the night stretching ahead full of possibility, Serena didn't care about the odds. She'd spent her whole life beating impossible odds. This would just be one more. So, Dylan murmured against her hair, when you move in, does that mean I get to taste test all your recipes? Obviously, that's practically the main benefit of this arrangement. I thought the main benefit was my devastating charm and rugged good looks. That's like benefit number 7, maybe 8. 8, he pulled back to look at her mock offended. What are the other 7? Liam, your kitchen, that you're secretly a softie under. The scary mobster exterior, your coffee maker, the fact that you laugh at my jokes. He kissed her, cutting off the list. How about we make a new list, one that starts with we love each other and ends with we're going to make this work no matter what. That's only 2 things. Then it's a very focused list. Serena laughed, the sound carrying across the grounds, and somewhere in the house, she could have sworn she heard Liam sigh in his sleep, a sound of contentment, of a child who'd finally gotten his biggest birthday wish. A family messy and unconventional, and built from the unlikeliest pieces. But theirs, completely impossibly, perfectly theirs. The end. Epilogue 6 months later. The Ivory Rose had a new item on its menu, Serena's Comfort Classics, a small section featuring the kind of food that didn't belong in a restaurant where senators whispered secrets, but somehow fit perfectly anyway. Spaghetti and meatballs, chicken parmesan. The kind of food that tasted like love made visible. It was Liam's idea, technically. He told his teacher that Miss Serena made the best food in the world, and somehow that had reached Laurent, who'd grumbled about lowering standards for exactly 3 minutes before admitting that maybe, possibly, there was room for soul food alongside haute cuisine. Serena still worked there 3 days a week, part server, part specialty chef, part reminder that good food didn't need to be complicated to be extraordinary. The rest of the week she spent at the Connecticut estate, teaching Liam to cook, managing Dylan's household, and slowly, carefully, learning to navigate the dangerous waters of his world. It had their share of problems, arguments about risk, about boundaries, about the constant balance between Dylan's need to protect and Serena's need for independence. But they'd also had moments of perfect joy. Liam's first successful pancake flip, Dylan's careful attempts to cook dinner for her less successful but earnest, quiet evenings where danger felt distant and love felt close. And tonight, standing in the Ivory Rose's kitchen during the dinner rush, watching Laurent plate her spaghetti with the same reverence he gave his French delicacies, Serena felt something she'd never quite felt before. Complete. Her phone buzzed, a text from Dylan. Liam wants to know if you're making pancakes tomorrow. I want to know if you're coming home tonight. We miss you. She smiled, typed back, pancakes are a maybe. Coming home is definite. Love you both. Love you too. Drive safe. Thomas says to avoid Route 7, there's construction. Even Dylan's love texts included security updates. Some things never changed. Miss Mason, Laurent called, your meatballs are ready for pickup. Coming. She delivered the plates to a table where a father sat with his young daughter, who'd been picking at her food all evening until the spaghetti arrived. The little girl's eyes lit up at the sight of it, and she dug in with enthusiasm. The father looked up at Serena, gratitude clear in his face. Thank you, she hasn't eaten anything in days. I don't know what you put in this, but it's magic. Just love, Serena said, and a really good recipe from my grandmother. As she walked back to the kitchen, she thought about the unlikely journey that had brought her here. From invisible cleaner to essential chef, from lonely woman to beloved partner, from survivor to someone who was finally, genuinely thriving. It hadn't been easy, it hadn't been simple, but it had been real. And sometimes, Serena thought, real was better than perfect any day of the week. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is let someone love you, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is love them back anyway.